It doesn't matter where you reside in the world, you must have come across Ford cars. Ford has operations across 125 countries worldwide. But can you imagine the brand was built by a boy who once worked on a farm? From building one of the largest automobile brands in America to having 4 murders in his name, the journey of Henry Ford is no less than a roller coaster. In 1863, a boy named Henry was born on a small farm in Michigan. By the year 1879, he ran away from his farm to pursue something different. Imagine a world where traveling just a few miles took hours. Roads were filled with horses and carriages, and cars were a luxury only the richest could afford. But then one man who had almost nothing brought an idea that changed everything. Cars shouldn't just be for the wealthy. This is what Henry believed in. What he had was a love for machines, a determination to succeed, and an idea that would forever change how we travel. The story of Henry Ford is not at all a straightforward story. He ran from his father's farm when he was just 16 and was fired from work just after 6 days of joining. His journey to building an empire is not ordinary. From introducing the 5-work week to setting up the first assembly line, Henry Ford revolutionized the car industry. He was born on the 30th of July, 1863, to William Ford and Mary. Henry Ford was the eldest of 6 children in his family, so the responsibility of his whole family and running their farming business was all upon him. At that time, when farming was just meant for labor, Henry had no option but to work, until he ran away one day. His father disliked him, and he was also tagged as the laziest kid in his family. He often ignored his daily responsibilities as a son, but there was a reason for it. He had something different in his mind. I never had any particular love for the farm. It was the mother on the farm I loved. Henry always had a passion for machines. Using simple tools at home, he played around with clocks and other gadgets. His fascination with machinery grew beyond limits. He tended to study every machinery he came across. A mechanical genius from a young age, Henry's journey with machines started with his first job at a watch shop. He used the skills he learned at a very young age, using the pocket watch given by his father when he was 12. Later, he gained reputation as a watch repairer and began repairing watches in the neighborhood. While traveling to Detroit with his father, he came across a steam engine. This was the first time he saw something that was not horse-driven. Henry was so fascinated by it that he wanted to create such a vehicle of his own. When Henry was 13, his mother passed away due to childbirth complications. After his mother's death, Henry was so upset that he began disliking his rural life, as it had memories of his mother. He began to think that his life was more than just milking cows and working on the farm. This thought grew, and Henry finally decided to leave his home and move to Detroit. His father did not like his decision, as he expected him to inherit the family business and take care of his farm. Things got worse when Henry lost his job just after a week of his joining. Henry was alone in a new city without any income. Soon help came, but from the person whom he least expected. It was his father who helped him get a job as a repairman at a garage run by his longtime friend. However, the income was not enough to help him sustain himself in a new city. He arranged his stay at his aunt's place and took a night job as a jewelry repairman. Combining both his jobs, he managed to make $5.50 a week. This job gave him a lot of time to work with machines. The year 1882 came when a neighbor came to Henry and asked if he could repair his newly purchased steam engine. Despite not knowing the engine, Henry was somehow able to get the engine running again. This infused confidence into Henry, and he also received a salary of $3 per day. Henry's talent soon became the talk of the town, and one day the tractor manufacturer company approached him for a job as a repairman. Ford accepted the offer and spent the next few months doing the job. But his dream wouldn't let him sleep. In his leisure hours, he continued research towards building his steam engine, which would run on roads. Despite Henry's constant efforts, he failed several times. Many hurdles came his way. The steam engine was designed to run on the railway tracks and was too heavy. It seemed his dream would never come true when he came across a magazine that talked about a new invention known as the silent gas engine. Henry was puzzled. At first, he dismissed the idea of an engine that ran on gas. A few weeks later, his company asked him to repair a gasoline engine. This was the time when Henry was impressed by gas engines. The engine was far more advanced, produced more energy, and was lightweight. Henry couldn't sleep for days. It seemed his dream to build his vehicle would come true. He discussed the matter with his fiancée Clara. Soon he moved back to Detroit in pursuit of learning more about the engine. He was lucky enough to get a job as a repairman in the Edison Illuminating Company. Luckily, he got an opportunity to work with gas engines. He worked hard, and one fine day, Thomas Edison, the owner of the company, was so impressed that he made him the chief engineer. Henry's salary doubled to $80 per week. Times had changed for him, but he wasn't happy. It was his dream that kept on troubling him again and again. But one thing was good. This job required him to stay on the desk, and he had more time to research on building his engine. Soon he reached his first height of success when he made a gasoline engine. However, the engine was basic and only ran for a minute. But Ford knew he was close to building his first horseless carriage. He worked hard for the next few years. He often used parts that were scraped by his factory. By the year 1896, Henry had built his first vehicle. The vehicle was made by welding two bicycles and a square chassis, and was known as the quadricycle. The first drive of the vehicle began early morning on June 4, 1986. The car surprised everyone as it was fast and reliable. It went up to a speed of 20 miles per hour. Soon Henry's vehicle was the new buzz. This was just the start. Henry sold the model for $200. He used the money to work on his next project. But this wouldn't be possible without leaving his job. It was tough, but Henry decided to quit his job and start his own company. The year 1899 came, and Henry came across a wealthy lumber salesman who was too impressed by his car. Soon he became the first investor in Henry's company. In no time, he had brought 12 investors to the table and raised funds worth $15,000. This was how Detroit Automotive Company was founded. The company began its operations in August 1899 with Henry Ford as the chief engineer. The market for horseless carriages already existed, but all of them were too expensive for a common man to afford. But Henry had something different in his mind. He wanted a car everyone could afford. Despite several conflicts with his investors, he continued to work towards offering great quality at a cheaper price. As a result, his business was a loss. By the year 1901, the Detroit Automotive Company had to shut down. Henry was heartbroken, but he now had more time to work on his ideas. One of his friends offered him a space to continue building his cars. But this time, the idea was to produce cars that were lighter and meant for city transportation. This was the birth of the Henry Ford Motor Company. Once again, he had conflicts with his investors who wanted him to work on the idea of producing cars that gained more profits. Henry was removed from his position of chief engineer, and he resigned. Henry Ford was now back to zero with 2 failures under his name. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. He now worked on a racing car model known as the Model A. These cars were hand-built, and workers weren't able to make more than 2 or 3 cars each day. It was a slow process. Henry wanted to speed up his manufacturing, to end waiting times, and keep customers happy. His idea of building an assembly line came from a slaughterhouse. He built a system where workers didn't have to move around cars, but they came to them through a crane and pulley. His invention of an assembly line was a hit. The production of his company increased, and he hired 300 new employees. Soon he began to manufacture individual car parts in his factory, which reduced his dependency on third-party manufacturers. This sped up the production time of his cars, and the whole process took just 90 minutes. The Ford Model T was launched, and it became one of the most sold cars in history. The car was affordable and easy to operate. It was loved by the masses and was a bestseller. By the year 1914, Ford Motor Company outshined its competitors and was selling more cars than any other brand. Henry came up with a new marketing strategy. He lowered the price of the Model T. As a result, more than 15 million cars were sold. Despite his success, Ford was in despair as his company was losing employees. Workers were frustrated working on the same production process and began to quit their jobs. Henry was clueless. This could end his company. Soon he invented the 5-day workweek. He doubled the pay of his employees from $2.50 to $5 a day. Once again, this outraged his shareholders, and they believed Henry was burning a hole in their pockets. In no time, he proved them wrong, as workers from all over the country moved to Detroit to join the Ford Motor Company. This, in return, significantly increased the production and brought huge profits to the company. Now his factory was running 24 hours a day with 3 8-hour shifts. But his shareholders were still not happy. They kept intruding into business until when Henry decided to buy the majority shares from his savings. In 1919, Henry Ford handed over his business to his son, Edsel Ford. But it was still Henry who made all the major decisions of the company. After a few years, sales of the Model T decreased, as America wanted something new. Something that his competitors, General Motors and Chrysler, were producing. In the year 1927, Ford agreed to produce a new car. It was a newer version of the Model A and was powered by the latest V8 engine. By now, the Great Depression had already hit. Ford had to lay off its employees and also reduce their wages. On the 7th of March, 1932, the Ford Hunger March, also called the Ford Massacre, took place. It happened outside the Ford Motor Company's River Rouge plant. Workers were protesting for better pay, safer working conditions, and the right to join a union. It was when Ford's police force threw tear gas and also opened fire on the protesters. This resulted in the death of 4 workers. The event highlighted the struggles between big companies and labor. Later, Henry Ford moved to Brazil in search of rubber, which was to be used in the production of car tires and other parts. But his goal was to create a land where his people resided. He named it the Fordlandia. Ford's idea was to build a modern American-style town in the jungle, complete with houses, schools, hospitals, and entertainment for the workers. Henry Ford was admired by Adolf Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany. Hitler praised him for his success in the automotive industry and his views on certain social and political issues. He also mentioned that he had a full-size picture of Ford in his office. However, the connection between them goes beyond admiration. Ford was known for his anti-Semitic views, and he published a series of articles and pamphlets in the 1920s through his newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, which spread harmful and false ideas about Jewish people. In 1938, Hitler even awarded Henry Ford the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest honor given to foreign nationals. In the year 1943, Edsel Ford died due to stomach cancer. Edsel faced a lot of pressure running the company, especially because Henry Ford often overruled his decisions. Sadly, Edsel's health suffered due to the constant stress he endured. Within a few years of his son's death, Henry Ford passed away in the year 1947. His grandson, Henry Ford II, took over the company. He brought in new leaders and ideas, making Ford more efficient and competitive. The company continues to produce great cars such as the Mustang, Explorer, and the F-150. Over the years, Ford continued to expand globally and develop new technologies. But it was no longer the same as it was once under its true leader. Currently, The company is all set to expand its production of electric cars with great support from the U.S. Department of Energy. Despite all hurdles, Ford continues to be one of the most loved cars across the globe.